introduction to the Sri Lankan economy. What is Sri Lankan economy? Now you can see in the size of the total production, 80 billion, the Sri Lanka's total GDP, the total production is 80.7 billion, let's say 80 billion economy. And we have close to 22 million population, 22 million population. So as a result, you know, the total GDP divided by number of people, we have per capita income, which is in 2020 was 3,682 in terms of American dollar. In terms of purchasing power parity, PPP, it is around 13,000. Now we can see how the economy is functioning. The structure of the economy, you can see here, the structure of the economy, particularly how the Sri Lankan production is consisted. Number one, you can see largest sector is the services sector, which contributes 64.4% of our GDP. Then the second sector is the industry, what we call manufacturing sector, is 28% close to. And then we have agriculture sector around 8%. We have agriculture sector. So that is how the Sri Lankan production is consisted. We are going to talk about a crisis in Sri Lanka that can be understood by watching the next index in economics, which is the economic growth rate. Real growth rate, you can see here that during last 5 years, it has been coming down gradually, and last year we recorded the negative growth, but negative 3.6 growth, because that one quarter, particularly the second quarter last year, we closed down the entire economy and we call it lockdown. So due to the lockdown, of course, our economy went into negative 3.6 value of the GDP growth rate. Then I would like to make my presentation close to you also. When we are talking about any economy, we can see how they are development based, the real base, by understanding GNI per capita as a percentage of United States of America. If you take the US GNI per capita as 100, how is our economies have performed during last 30 years is given here. You can see during last 30 years how our economy has given here. So that you can see, for example, Malaysia in 1990, when the US dollar, if you take US GNI, you take as 100, the Malaysian GNI per capita was 27.6. During last 30 years, it increased to 41.4. And then you can see Thailand, for example, it was 18% of US per capita GNI in 1990. It had increased to 26.8% by the 2020. So in this comparison, you can see Sri Lanka was having only 9.7% of US per capita income. Then it increased to 19.5 during last 30 years. So Sri Lanka's GDP GNI comparison is in terms of the purchasing power parity. When we compare with the United States of America as 100, it improved from around 10 digits, right? Then of course the other countries we can understand. So when I create this graph, I was looking into two categories, because if I draw all the things in one graph, it is not nice. We can't clearly understand. So therefore, I wanted to show that the one category of countries which are still below the 50% of US per capita income, 50 percent of, if you take the US income as 100, below the 50 of US income, the one category which has here the Malaysia, Kazakhstan, Thailand, China, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, India, and Malaysia. Then I, of course, went into the second category, which is above the 50% of US per capita income during this period. So that you can see, for example, South Korea, it had 35 out of 100 US dollar income in 1990. It had increased to 65.8%. And then similarly, you can see Japan, of course, slightly coming down, but other countries you can see here. So that therefore, this comparison is very important to understand our development base during last 30 years. So then within that, what we can see, among the developing countries, Sri Lanka has got certain development during last 30 years. Now the issue is, we can see, the other hand, Sri Lanka always recorded higher social development level. So that even in development economics, people believe that Sri Lanka is a different country. Why? Because our human development, social development has been higher because of the more than economic growth. We have emphasized distribution pattern over the long run. So as a result, you can see life expectancy of Sri Lankans average 77, which is highest in the South Asia. And infant mortality rate is 8, and school enrollment almost 99%. But we do have some long-term issues where we have good human capital, but we have not really utilized this human capital in the production process. So that is kind of a issue for the long-run structural issue for a Sri Lankan economy.